Hello my friends, I am in Rueda, the town giving its name to the denomination of origin Rueda. This is a region of knights, castles and lions and a millenary history. But nothing brings people to this region like wine. Perhaps cheese would run second, right next to wine. Indeed, what a better company for a Rueda cheese than a Verdejo. Verdejo is a grape that has quickly gained international reputation and placed Rueda on the Olympus of white wine, perhaps next to well-known white wine French areas such as the Loire or Chablis. But Verdejo is not the only grape. Piura, the classical Spanish white grape, is also important here. And elegant Sauvignon Blanc wines of crisp acidity are also gaining attention by the international community. Anyways, something should be behind the fact that Verdejo is the best-selling white wine of Spain. Let's find out. Rueda is a Spanish protected denomination of origin for wines produced in the community of Castile and Leon. It comprises 74 municipalities, of which 53 are in the province of Valladolid, 17 are in the north of the province of Segovia, and 4 are in the north of the province of Avila. The town Rueda gives its name to the denomination. However, La Seca is the municipality with the winemaking history most representative of the denomination and where many of the oldest vineyards are found. One may wonder why someone chose this region to plant vines a millennium ago, given its extreme climatic conditions with hot summers and freezing cold winters. Surely, the local monks of the 11th century decided to do so, starting a tradition that has remained to our day. Thought to be native to the north of Africa, monks quickly adopted it, as it adapts extremely well to the area. Indeed, the first documentary evidence of wine production relates to King Alphonse VI. He offered lands to the settlers in an area recently reconquered to the Moors. Many individuals and monastic orders accepted the offer, leading to most monasteries adding their own vineyards. For a long time, Verdejo was the only planted grape in the area, and wines became very popular due to the use of a local clay to obtain quality clarification of wines. Things changed after the devastation due to the attack of Phylloxera, after which new grape varieties were planted and the area transited into a dark age of volume production of bulk wines. It was not until the investment in the area by the well-known Rioja winery Marqués de Riscal that Rueda started the second era of quality wine production, leading to its recognition as the first denomination of origin of Castile and Leon, and which has arrived to this time. Hi, I'm here in Rueda and I'm with Carlos Higuera, who is the president of the Regulatory Council of the Denomination of Origin Rueda.
Carlos, glad to be here. Thanks for receiving us.
Thank you for accompanying us on such a nice day. Our origins were established more or less in the 11th or 12th centuries. There are documents from when the kingdom named Rueda as a villa, and there are documents that mention the virtues of the vineyards and wines made in the region. Rueda origins are associated with sherry-like wines, aged wines. When the denomination was formed in 1980, 8 to 9 wineries got together to prepare a regulation and establish the basis for what is currently the modern denomination of origin. They changed the philosophy of the wines and established the parameters to follow what is now part of our history, moving from a few wineries and some kilos of grapes to the 72 producers that we now have, and almost 103 million kilograms of our last harvest. In the early 70s, Marqués de Riscal came here looking for the Viura grape. as they were looking for a grape to make a young wine. They were looking for a young wine with Viura, which is the grape they had in Rioja. When they found the Verdejo in this area, they were enchanted by its properties. Due to their recognition and visibility, and also other wineries who started to work here, they changed the concept of aged wine, golden wine of the fortified wines, towards young, fresh wines. We also now have many brands. In the past we had very few brands, very few wineries. Now we have more than 1,000 Rueda labels. We have achieved to create many references for the many markets where we use special labels. And the wineries can use all of them, reaching to more consumers. This allows us to diversify.
I'm here with Eduardo Cachazo, who is family owner of bodegas Félix Lorenzo Cachazo, and it's a pleasure being with you. Hola, Eduardo, ¿cómo estás?
It's a pleasure to be with you. Hola.
I wanted you to tell me about the history of your family, as you come from many generations in this area, and particularly about your family role in the creation of the denomination of origin, which I understand was the first in Castile and León. Tell me about it.
Yes, we are a family winery. The owners now are my parents, Felix and Rita. Felix Lorenzo Cachazo. I have a sister who is the enologist, Angela. My sister and I are the 6th generation of winemakers in the family. Obviously, nothing to do with what it was before. Historically, our ancestors made white wines to sell as bulk wine in the area. It was my grandfather in 1946 who started to bottle his own wines. That was rare at the time, to bottle wines. Obviously, those wines had nothing to do with the ones we make now. What my grandpa and his ancestors made were dorados. Dorados were wines of high alcoholic grade, very strong and structured, with 18 or 20% alcohol by volume. Back then, there were only around 8 producers. At the end of the 1970s, they realized that those wines were dying, and they had a grape, a very distinct grape, the Verdejo, that was about to disappear. They realized that they needed to produce a new style of wine at a time when the consumption of white wine in Spain was minimal. White wine was even seen as a bad wine at the time. Against all odds, those 8 producers decided to create Rueda. Indeed, what they did was to create a new style of wine, which was even more complicated. They created a new wine, and they had to create a new consumer for it.
Albert, show me your subterranean cellar.
Please.
Should I go down first?
A pleasure.
Let's see how we feel the change in temperature as we go down.
You will feel it cold, as we have a constant temperature all year round between 12 and 14 degrees. Whether winter or summer, we always have the same temperature.
So the temperature decreases here, and this is why they excavated them.
Well, this was the process that we had to make wine. Note that this cellar is from the 15th century. Back then we did not have the techniques that we have now, so they achieved low temperatures by digging underground.
And then storing the wines in these barrels, which had to be assembled down here.
Correct. They have to do all of it here, manually. Incredible. Manual labor to dig, make the walls and caves.
Then the humidity aspect. It is important for the aging wine to be conserved with high humidity levels, which is also guaranteed in these cellars, right?
That's correct. But we have to be very careful with this. These cellars have chimneys that allow the recirculation of air in the cellar and prevent condensation of the humidity. If it condenses, the subterranean cellar can collapse, and it's a pity. We have lost many of them because they have been built over, in eliminating the chimneys, the cellars, and collapsing.
I see. And also the air circulation is necessary during fermentation to prevent depleting the oxygen.
That's also very important. Indeed, they used to have a cage with a bird as reference. We have one there to remember the conditions of the past. In the end, the fermentation was a problem. Even nowadays, it needs a very good control. No person alone should be inside during fermentation. In case of any problem happening, imagine how it was in the past in these cellars.
One thing that captures my attention in this cellar, I have seen many in the region where my family had some, is that this one is particularly large. It even has arcs that look mudéjar, with bricks and very spacious. This may have been a cellar used jointly by more than one producer, right?
Also note that this is a cellar from the 15th century. In those times, this was a very popular area. Remember that the capital of Spain was here, in Valladolid. And this was the only way to elaborate wine. There were many cellars back then. Unfortunately, many of them have been lost, but we have large excavations in the area of Rueda. Impressive.
Let's talk about regulation. Not in very detail, but if we talk about grapes, Verdejo is clearly the grape of Rueda, but you have more whites. You have Viura, which continues as a traditional grape. You even find some wines of Viura made in the old style, with oak aging. You also have Sauvignon Blanc, which I believe is exploding. They're starting to compare you with other famous areas, such as the best French areas for Verdejo, but also by the Sauvignon Blanc. Can you tell me about it?
Yes, the origin is on these three varieties, mainly Palomino, Viura and, of course, Verdejo. But more recently, in the 80s, they started to plant Sauvignon Blanc. After being planted for many years, it was included in the regulation of the denomination. However, from a few years back, there cannot be more plantings of Palomino. What we have of Palomino can be maintained and used, but what is pulled out is lost. And we have introduced other varieties. In the past legislation, we succeeded in introducing Chardonnay and Viognier as Rueda grapes, although they must be blended with Verdejo. This has been done to achieve better diversity and to achieve wines with their own personality.
Rueda is associated with white wines, but you also have excellent red wines. We tried a fantastic wine yesterday. What are those red grapes?
In reality, the red wine is somewhat at rest. We don't have new plantings of red vines. Whatever is planted is what is used and maintained. There are not many wineries making red wines, but what is done is of high quality,
Commonly based on Tinta Fina.
which is Tempranillo or Tinta del País, as it's called in other places.
Then, on a more technical regulatory note, there is not much rain here. I assume people need to irrigate. Is it allowed?
Yes, it is possible. However, there are many vineyards that are farmed dry. That leads to wines with lots of personality. When the wines come from vineyards that are not irrigated, they have characteristics different than those that are irrigated.
Is the yield limited?
Yes. We have a maximum of 10,000 kilos per hectare in trellised vineyards of Verdejo and 11,000 for bunch vines.
To finish, I would like to know the different qualifications of Rueda. You have several. The most recent one that I like to know about, but can you list them all?
Yes, when it comes to labeling of Rueda wines, we have the generic qualification. Verdejo Sauvignon. These are for the main varieties for young wines and the reds as well. Then we have the Dorados, the Pálidos, the sparkling wines. As a novelty, we now have Gran Vino de Rueda, which is a wine that is qualified according to objective parameters. To get a Gran Vino de Rueda, they need to request the authorization to the council, and we will examine the vineyard. The maximum yield per hectare is only 6,500 kilos. Vineyards must be at least 30 years old, and a maximum seasonal yield of 65%. This ensures wines of the highest quality.
And aside of this Gran Vino de Rueda that you've just announced, of which this year has been its first vintage, you have the Dorado. I had never tried before, but I tasted one yesterday. Fantastic. This is coming back to the past and recover those fortified styles, so they don't fortify always now.
There are some wineries that still made them fortified. Yes, those are antique styles, and they see very low productions currently. We are elaborating those styles of wines, but we are trying to look at the past, but aiming at getting wines of the highest quality. Particularly, we want special wines. We don't want wines resembling what is made in other places. but associated to the variety and setting a unique production style.
To conclude, I see that some producers, and even the Council, are placing the focus on recovering autochthonous varieties. I don't know what they are. I have heard about the Castellana Blanca, others that I don't remember.
Not yet. Inside Rueda, we have the allowed varieties. Outside of the regulation, some producers are starting to work on those varieties, but they cannot be included in Rueda until some years pass by, and the Spanish ministry approves them. They need some time.
All right, Carlos, thank you for the explanations.
I am in a field of pine trees, found everywhere around the area. Behind, I have a Pre-Phylloxeric vineyard of 140 years of age, nearby Alcázaren, a little town of the DO Rueda. In this section, we will discuss the climate and the geology of the denomination of origin Rueda to help understand the wines of this area.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take sh**. I got no love for the fakeness.
The climate in Rueda is continental, with long cold winters and hot summers. Temperatures vary widely, with freezing marks in winter and in the moderate to hot 30s in the summer. The area suffers from several climatologic challenges, including frost, freezing fog, high winds and hailstones in winter and spring, but is generally not affected by drought. Most of the vineyards are planted south of the Duero River, benefiting from its moderating effect, which is important taking into account the high elevation of the area, between 600 to 800 meters above sea level, giving the vines more than 2,700 hours of sunlight per year. Rain is usually concentrated in spring and fall, with an average rainfall in the low 400 millimeters per year. The low rainfall level, together with the high elevation and constant winds, make Verdejo thrive in this area and enable organic viticultural practices.
We are in the Castilian Plateau, in the middle of Spain, and here, as Antonio Machado used to say, we have 10 months of winter and 2 of hell. We have 10 very cold months and 2 very hot months, and an extreme climate. In the end, we have realised that the worse you treat the grape, the better it expresses itself. It needs such an extreme cold with frosts of 15 degrees below zero and summers of 40 degrees Celsius to express itself as it does.
But we are at a high altitude.
Yes, this is the altitude of the Castilian Plateau. We are at 700 to 800 meters above sea level. Right in my town, we are at 800 meters. It's the most elevated town in Rueda do.
This provides cold in winter, but then the summer heat gets softened, perhaps with drastic variations of temperature overnight.
Yes, that's it. That is very necessary. Today, for example, we had a night with a temperature of 5 degrees, and during the day, we hit 30 degrees C. In the end, the grape welcomes this.
Today we meet in June.
Yes, exactly, June.
And then little rain.
Yes, this is a relatively dry area. Indeed, they used to plant vineyards here because it's the crop that adapts best to these conditions, to all kinds of climatology and low rainfall.
I'm here with Javier Sanz in La Seca, and he's owner of Bodegas Javier Sanz. He's actually the 4th generation of a long-standing family in this area, in Rueda. And we're going to be talking to him about viticulture and other things.
Javier, thanks for receiving us. I'm going to ask you about the climate. How do you describe it? I know it's continental, very extreme.
Yes, the climate is continental. In winter it's very cold, but summers are very hot. But what is very beneficial for the grape, for the ripening, is that the maturation season, August and September, the temperature changes between day and night are very abrupt. We have days of 34 degrees C and then it drops to 12, 13. This so substantial change, which does not occur in other areas, is crucial for the maturation of the grape.
This is a very dry area, right? Without much rain, you are at the limit.
Here we have a little more than 300 liters per square meter. Unfortunately, it keeps decreasing. Even so, if things are done well, it's sufficient. If you have those liters during the year, it is enough for a normal harvest. Some start supplementing with irrigation, but I consider that irrigation should only be used as a complement and not as a base for production.
Vine roots are forced to dig deep through the sandy and stony soil in Rueda in look for waters and nutrients. This provides the wines a marked minerality that makes them apart. The land is a flat plain at high altitude, divided by the Duero River flowing through the area from east to west. In the vicinity of the river, soils are alluvial with a high lime content. In the most southern areas, the soil becomes brownish and sandy with high iron content and easy to plow, and with a gravel and clay subsoil. Soils generally present good drainage, allowing the scarce water to be retained in the subsoil. I'm here in La Seca and I'm with Vidal and Alicia Vidal, who are family owners of Bodegas Vidal Soblechero here in La Seca in Rueda. And
Good day, good afternoon. Glad to meet you. Thanks for receiving us.
Good afternoon. We are also pleased to receive you in such a nice landscape of La Seca.
What I know best, as we have many generations here in La Seca, is what it relates to La Seca. In La Seca, we have 3,600 hectares of vineyards. In these 3,600 hectares, there are three very characteristic types of soils. In the zones closest to the river, which is where we are right now, called Buena Vista, these are very sandy zones.
Excuse me, sandy but underneath the rocks.
These rolling stones that we can see here, I was talking about the subsoils. On the surface, we will always find rolling stones. Rolling stones are very characteristic of La Seca. Therefore, when we are closest to the river, we find more sand. Then, in the highest parts of the location, we have a calcareous area. And there is a third zone that is clay. In the sandy zones, we find wines that are more perfumed, with less longevity, and are more feminine. These wines have a shorter evolution time, reaching their peak earlier in the evolution curve. This kind of soil allows us to express what the Verdejo from Buena Vista really is.
And in the clay soils, what difference do you see?
With clay, there is a characteristic associated to the low rainfall levels in this area. When it rains in winter, the clay subsoil stores the water and provides it back to the plant in the summer. In every hot and dry summer, the clay zones look much fresher and they withstand the summer much better. Another characteristic is that, for example, the sandy areas are problematic at harvest when it rains, as in sandy soils the water is quickly absorbed by the plant. The grape fattens very quickly, making the sandy zones very problematic during harvest.
Alicia, the rolling stone with the cold climate that you have here, I assume it would help in heating and storing heat to give it then to the vine when it needs it more during night or when it's colder.
There are two very important times, one in the spring, in April, where we can get sudden frosts and the vine is already growing. The rolling stones get warm during the day and transfer this heat to the plant during the night. This is when in the rest of Castile and Leon, there has been a big frost and everybody has been affected. And here, we practically don't notice it. Another important moment is in August. As you know, we have very large changes in temperature between day and night. At 4 p.m, we may have 40 degrees Celsius and at 4 a.m, only 15. Again, the heat stored by the stones avoids that the grape that has been ripening during the day does not feel so much stress with the temperature drops in the night. The heat is being released to the vine, helping the grape to ripen slowly, retaining much better the nice acidity that is characteristic of Verdejo.
Right now we are in the second bench of the Duero River. What is the composition of any of the benches? There is a zone between 20 centimeters and 7 meters of sand and stones. Then you find a zone of clay, and below there is a layer of impermeable limestone. This makes all the water from the rain to reach and stay in the clay.
The sun helps to drain the water to reach to the lower layers and also allows the roots to penetrate with ease.
Sure, the roots are always looking for the water. The water has the nutrients. And if the roots are very old, they will reach down the 7 meters until finding the water down there.
There should be a difference between this vine that is almost 200 years old and the small one offspring of the old one, whose roots may not be that deep yet.
Correct.
In a bad year, this one can do well and the other not.
And you actually see it now. It has drought symptoms, some leaves.
I see, yes.
I believe that the difference is obvious. It is clear what the difference between the two vines are. This is the young vine, not able to reach the deep water, and this is the old vine that is able to reach it.
Talking about soils, this type of soil here, which is not very common in the area, is special and makes it possible to find these very old vineyards because it is pure sand.
This is not the common soil of this area. The characteristic soil of Rueda is full of rolling stones. Lots of stones that help a lot during the ripening of the grapes. But I wanted to bring you to this zone because it is rare. Rare for two reasons: the soil, which is pure sand, and the age of the vineyard, which dates prior to Phylloxera. It's at least 140 years old.
Precisely, it has survived because it is sand, and the back, the Phylloxera, does not like sand, right?
These two are interconnected between them. Without this type of soil, the vineyards would not have survived. In the end, the Phylloxera is an insect that moves underground, making tunnels. They reach the roots and dry the plant. It basically ended with the vineyards of the whole of Europe. Luckily, as this is a terrain with lots of sand, the Phylloxera could not make tunnels as they would collapse. And this was the big secret for this vineyard to survive.
Rueda and its signature grape, Verdejo, is all about agriculture. World-class winemakers move here to make the world's next great white wine, featuring a grape with tremendous potential. I'm now in La Seca, a winemaking town of Rueda d'O, surrounded by vineyards. Let's have a look at the viticulture and grapes of this region. Viticultural practices have changed substantially during the last decades in Rueda. Difficult to imagine now? Viticulturists in Rueda have worked the Verdejo vines in view of producing fortified Solera-aged wines that were sold in numerous territories of Spain. When the popularity of the fortified wines declined, locals had to reinvent themselves. Marquès de Riscal, together with the renowned French enologist Émile Penot, decided to exploit the region's high altitude, well-drained soils and cold climate of Rueda to produce fresh and lively white wines. Today, Rueda is a white wine region, and viticultural practices are shaped for the production of the highest quality white skunk, probably V, found in Spain.
Then viticulture. You're very traditional in all respects, in the style of wine you make and also in how to work the vineyard.
It's what my father and my grandfather did. We plough and sulfate to prevent diseases, but nothing else. In very specific times, and with horses to respect the terrain, to avoid excessive compaction. And the manner to work the terrain creating dust is important because the plagues like to go to clean leaves to lay the eggs. If you don't have dust in the leaves, they cannot lay their eggs. This is another way to prevent diseases. This is an ancestral process, and this is why we use horses, as they create more dust than tractors.
Do you have the ecologic certificate?
Yes, it is a bureaucratic thing, but we have it here and in the winery. But it is by conviction. We always done it. In our vineyards, we have never had synthetic treatments. It is all natural.
Vidal, we are in another vineyard where underneath the stones we have calcareous soil. And this can be seen in the leaves, right?
Yes. In calcareous zones, the iron is blocked from the plant. This deficit of iron in all vineyards around the world translates to a yellowing of the leaves.
And I also see over there a fig tree that you use as a marker.
It's a natural harvest marker. Around the 25th of July, the fig tree gives the first fruit, called brevas. If on the 25th of July we eat brevas, the harvest comes as normal. If the brevas come earlier or later, the differential translates to the number of days the harvest will be early or late as well. In a natural way, we know when we will harvest a month in advance.
And the quantity of brevas also relates to the yield of grapes?
Normally, we also see a clear correspondence between the quantity of brevas in the fig tree and the grapes that ripen properly at the end of harvest.
You're holding a peregrine falcon in your hands. This is the art of falconry that your family has practiced for 30 years. How do you use it to prevent attacks to the vineyards?
In sometimes during the season, the vineyards can be attacked by animals. For example, hares during budding or rabbits at other times. What we do, not with the peregrine, but with other falcons that we have, is to catch the animals and move them to another area where they don't cause problems. With the peregrine falcon, there is a time right before harvest where starling birds come from Europe. We call them toldos. They arrive in big groups that can eat a whole vineyard completely. What we do is to run trained flights with the falcons. When the starlings see the falcon that can attack them, they move to other areas where they feel safer. These are intimidating flights.
This is a millenary tradition. It was used in the Middle Ages for hunting, right? The falcon hunts a piece but does not kill it, as it has been fed by humans. They hold the piece for you to take it and eat it.
It is said that it is the only bird that made kings kneel down. When a falcon has caught a piece, you cannot approach it in any haughty manner. You need to kneel down and move very carefully so the falcon doesn't feel attacked. It is the only one living being to make kings kneel down.
Falcons rise to very high altitudes, using thermal currents and then drop sharply. What speed can they take?
Usually they go up 200 or 300 meters in height over us. They can reach 340 kilometers per hour when swooping down, although speeds of 180 to 200 kilometers per hour are common. We cannot forget our origins and roots. We are people of strong convictions. We love our villages. And we have a big problem with population loss in our area, and it's a social commitment to continue working with small viticulturists. Of course, we have our own vineyard. We have around 30 hectares, but we also work with small viticulturists, like with Tino in this case, who is the owner of this vineyard. He takes care of it and does it better than anybody.
Better than anyone, you know your vineyard, right?
Each one does it its own way. That is simple. It is how I like it to be. The neighbor has his own style.
Which is clean and with the plants working its best.
Each one can do it the way they think is best.
We are in this vine in particular, which is a vine of 140 years of age. And we see these other plants that are all coming from the same one. How does it work?
This was in a spring. A year when I took a branch that you see here next to the old wood and held it with a stick and a rope. It grew very tall during the summer. In the following winter, once it was very tall, I dug a ditch in the ground of a meter approximately, and I buried it there.
Underground?
Yes, underground, with a ditch of a meter or a meter and a half approximately, and then I brought it here. This one grew taller than this one even. The following winter I move it over there, and left another branch ready as well. This one, for example, if it grows well, in the next winter I will bring it over there.
That way you keep covering the openings.
Yes, I can cover the clear terrain.
And the grape will be of the same age, because it comes from the same plant. You don't lose anything. And this can be done because we don't need to use American rootstocks, right?
Correct.
It would not be necessary because they would not be attacked by the phylloxera.
I could take part of the plant and plant it over there. It will get green, but it will not become so productive as it will not have enough roots. New vines could not compete with them. The old ones would kill the new ones.
The Verdejo grape is the queen in Rueda, but it's not the only one. Viura, Sauvignon Blanc and Palomino Fino are also allowed white varieties, and other foreign varieties such as Viognier and Chardonnay have been recently approved as well. Although not making a big share in the production of Rueda wines, Tempranillo, Cabernet, Sauvignon, Merlot, Shiraz and Garnacha are also authorized in the region.
In our winery, we are trying to be characterized by its diversity. We have been working for many years in identifying the plants genetically. This one here is Verdejo, but has little to do with other Verdejo grapes that are genetically different. This is the one we have chosen, and then we have brought grapes from other areas like the Bruñal, which is a variety of Los Arribes, and we now have it here as well. From the few hectares of this grape in Castile and León, we have part of it. These are long-term studies, but some of them are producing good results.
And in some cases with varieties that are not even identified.
Correct, that's right. We have in the market a Verdejo that has been practically lost, that is called Verdejo Malcorta because it was difficult to cut. That's why it was abandoned. We have recovered it and we make a wine that is Verdejo, but it's different to the rest, and I believe that it is a great Verdejo. And then we have the Bruñal that we launched 2 years ago. And then we also have other varieties that we know they are unique, but are still not fully ready. Our goal is to be viticulturists. One of the unique varieties that we have, and that it comes from a single vine that is here in particular vineyard, is a grape that we call Cenicienta, and genetically there is nothing similar. That is what we, us and the council, wish to be the red of Rueda, but this is talking about the future.
Is it only in your plot?
It is just a single vine from this vineyard that we have multiplied. We now have many more, but it all comes from the same vine. Basically, this is a variety very much from here, for more than 150 years.
The Verdejo that you have here, there are some other varieties, but the Verdejo is 140 years. Therefore, I imagine that this is a Verdejo a bit different from the Verdejo commonly found in Rueda.
Yes, we elaborate this vineyard separately from the rest. Even the cluster has nothing to do with the modern Verdejo. This Verdejo has a much smaller cluster, much tighter, with the berries closer to each other. It even has a more intense green colour. Nothing to do with the modern Verdejo that has more assistance to grow and leads to much larger clusters.
Then, in the elaboration of the wine, does it translate into more aromatic and structured wines?
Actually, that's not exactly the case. We used to think that since it comes from older vines, it should create more aromatic wines. Indeed, this area produces wines less aromatic than the modern Verdejos, but they are characterized by their structure. These are wines that are more structured, more rounded and oily. The youngest vineyards provide more nose. However, this vineyard provides longevity to the wine. Verdejo and Viura are ancestral varieties in La Seca. Our vineyards are very old, and we continue with these two white varieties. Tinta Fina, which is the adaptation of Tempranillo to the Duero, we also work with it here. These are varieties that we feel passionate about when it comes to making wine. We are recovering a variety called Prieto Picudo Blanco, which is a variety in extinction.
Talking about Verdejo, it comes from Africa, brought here by the Arabs, which is a little surprising because they did not drink wine. But you have a different theory, and it makes sense. I don't know if it is yours only, so can you tell me about it?
Our theory is that Verdejo has been documented to be here for 10 centuries, and it has coexisted with other varieties in the area. We believe that those are the varieties where the Verdejo genetically comes from. One is the Savagnin, which comes from the north of France and north of Europe, and one from the Iberian Peninsula, which is also in risk of extinction, which is the Castellana Blanca. These grapes crossed. We don't know where or when, but we believe that it should have been around this area where Verdejo was created. Genetically, it is known that it comes from these two varieties.
And you're trying to recover these two ancestral varieties?
Yes, these two varieties. We have planted Savagnin and we have planted Castellana Blanca. We want to know which wine comes from the Savagnin and which wine comes from the Castellana Blanca, which are the mother and father of Verdejo, and then compare them to the wine from the Verdejo. That's the idea.
Here in Rueda, a little town in the DO Rueda, they know well the winemaking history. If viticulture changed in moving from grapes for the production of fortified wines to crispy, fresh and elegant whites, one can easily imagine that the winemaking has experienced an equally drastic transition. Currently, winemaking in Rueda is astonishing due to the diversity of processes and methods used to make wines of outstanding quality. From temperature-controlled fermentation in stainless steel to aging in oak barriques or in an impressive landscape of glass damajuanas, the imagination of the Rueda winemaker has no limits. Let's hear about this from them directly. Well, I'm here with Albert Ustrail, who is owner of Bodegas Felix Sanz in Rueda, and in the elaboration room next to all these doers. And Albert, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Welcome, Enrique, to our cellar in Rueda.
I wanted to know about how you elaborate your John Verdejo and your Sauvignon Blanc, as I know that you make a very good wine that is becoming popular internationally.
Fortunately for everyone, the white is now becoming popular. Beyond the Verdejo, which is a grape very recognized in Spain, we are talking about the two youngest wines we do here. The elaboration, as you see here, is in stainless steel vessels, obviously with temperature control. It is simple. We come from the harvest, directly to the press and to the vessel where fermentation is controlled. We use autochthonous yeast, and after some clarification, we get this that we will soon taste. We start harvesting at 4 a.m. Here we have something that is actually a virtue for white wines. That is very abrupt changes in temperature. During harvest, we can reach 34 degrees during the day and drop to 12 overnight, which is why we bring the grapes to the winery in the night with the grape as cold as possible and avoiding oxidation for the best possible elaboration.
In these young wines, the Sauvignon and the Verdejo, you look for the fruit, the freshness, that they express the grape, right? How do you achieve this? What kind of elaboration? The autochthonous yeast help to express the fruit in the wine?
Totally. What we do is basically recover what has been always done. For the Verdejo and Sauvignon Blanc, particularly in this area, we made them monovarietal, which are the only ones we work at 100% the same grape in each of the two. We work with autochthonous yeast to express the personality of the grapes.
There are people who would prefer more structured and aged wines. And you make more styles. You have one made on slits, another cuvée. Those you can explain to me in the room of the barriques.
Let's do it.
We are in your room of barriques. You need to tell me about this wine. With crianza in barrique, in contact with its slits.
This wine is a total luxury. The Verdejo grape gives you different characteristics depending on the elaboration. In this case, we are talking about our cuvée. We use barriques of 225 and 500 liters that we have over there. We do the fermentation in oval deposits, and then they undergo crianza in the barriques.
Oval deposits of concrete?
Yes, concrete and then barriques.
How long will it stay in?
It depends on the vintage, as it depends on the grade the grapes come with. In principle, they stay in barriques between 8 and 9 months.
I'm here with Carmen San Martin Gutierrez, who is a family owner of Bodegas de Alberto here in the denomination of origin Rueda, particularly in Cerrada, in the town of Cerrada.
Carmen, glad to talk to you.
Same here. Glad to meet you.
I'd like you to explain the process of elaboration of your Dorado, which is how it was made during many centuries here before the establishment of the DO.
That's right. Here is where it all starts. Although we start from a base Rueda wine of Verdejo, and the wine arrives to this area already fortified. Then it will stay here in a process of hyperoxidation for more than a year, during which we'll experience temperatures below zero in winter and more than 40 degrees in summer.
That makes it to oxidize and stabilize, right?
Correct. Here it will acquire a golden caramel colour, which is what characterises it and provides its name, Dorajo, golden. That's why Dorajo gives name to this category of wines. This is a chamber of air because during the high temperatures it will expand. Many times the corks jump into the air.
When the process ends after more than a year, you move it to another place where it will continue aging, right?
Yes, it moves into a pre-Solera and Solera aging system.
We are in the Solera. From the Dama Juanas, you bring the wine here. How does it work?
This is where the last phase of the elaboration of the Dorado occurs. The wine comes from the Damajunos. Therefore, this is the last stage where the wine from all the Damajunos is blended with the mother wine that we have had here for 80 years. For this Dorajo style, first we perform a saca, by which we take 10% of each barrique. It will be blended all together, and that is what it goes to bottling. This is a homogeneous blend. That wine is then replaced by the one coming from the Damajunas. This would be the last phase of this style of wine.
When we say that the wine stays a given time in barrique before getting to market, indeed you have had wine that has spent 80 years as a little fraction remains from the beginning of the Solera.
Even if just a little portion, something remains, and the wine also acquires properties of the barquet during that time. We always say that each drop connects us with our own history. We like to think that the wine from our ancestors is still here.
And with this particular style, you elaborate two different wines, right? The Dorado, one sweet, and the other more dry, more traditional.
That is indeed correct. In the case of a sweet style, we start from a semi-sweet based wine, a wine that we didn't allow to complete the fermentation process. The wine has more sugars and we will need to fortify it more. Because it does not complete fermentation, it will have less alcoholic graduation and we will need to add more spirit to get to 17.5 ABV. But everything else in the process is the same. The base wine with which we work is the difference.
And then you have one that you call Dorado Pálido. The Pálido sees biologic crianza with flor.
Yes, this is other historic category of wines in the denomination of origin. It disappeared in 2007 and is a pure biologic crianza. We don't mix it. We don't do one part in biologic crianza and another part in oxidative and then we blend. What we do is the two processes separately and you'll be able to see it in the subterranean cellar later.
Okay, let's go. Carmen, we are in your subterranean cellar, which is not only a cellar with a long history, but also huge. You have 1.5 kilometers of tunnels. I don't know how you have arrived to so much extension underground.
Originally, the two main tunnels, which are made with marjar bricks and is very appealing, are from the 17th century, made by the Dominic order, which were the original owners of the winery since 1657. The expansion was built in the 40s and more recently when the Gutierrez family acquired the winery, in many instances purchasing from neighbours, which is how we gained so much expansion.
Back then, the wine was made and brought to the bucois, those gigantic barrels that need to be assembled inside the cellar because they did not fit through the entrances, right? What's their capacity?
They rank up to 16,000 litres. The largest is 16,000, always in multiples of 16, the traditional measure unit.
Because of the canteras, right?
Correct.
Then, after working with wood for a while, they started to make subterranean deposits of concrete. As the one we see here is closed, we cannot see inside.
Yes, they were looking to control temperature, but also it was a cleaner solution. It was the modern approach in those times.
And we are now inside one open deposit that you now use for another purpose, which is crianza in flor.
Yes, here we have the barricades, which are very characteristic. The original barricades of our Palido, which is the category of wines that disappeared in 2007, and has been recovered recently again by the Regulatory Council, which is the biologic crianza. These barricades in the subterranean cellar provide the exact conditions required for this style of wine. Constant humidity and temperature and the environmental yeast found in the cellar sustain the floor layout in the wine. Everybody thinks about sherry when talking about this process, but it is also a very traditional style in this winery and this area.
Drinking white wine is always a pleasure, and one can imagine sitting in a terrace in a hot summer day, at the beach, and in an island in paradise with a glass of fresh verdejo, picturing the characteristic nature associated to its area of origin and the cellars where it has been made. Or you can have a glass in the hotel of Bodegas Felix Sanz. What better place to stay while visiting the fantastic wine producing region? We had the privilege to taste some of the best Rueda wines by the hand of their producers, and I invite you to accompany us on this.
Now comes the best part, to try your wines. And we have a great selection. Let's take a couple.
We are in El Alto. This is the 2013 vintage.
This is the verdejo from this plot, right?
Yes, this one. In this type of soil, we are looking for very rounded wines, which is why we put them in the market 10 years after harvest, not before 10 years from its vintage.
5 or 6 years ago, we were considered the crazies of town, because it seemed that the wines had to be young and fruity, and this style of wine was not understood here.
It shows complexity and all kinds of aromas.
Let's try now our Cernus. My father was a visionary. He believed that where you can make great whites, you should be able to do other styles as well.
This one is based on Tinta Fina.
We are looking to express the quality of the soils in the area of Las Sernas, where the rolling stones in the soil surface are slightly smaller than in the rest of the areas. This means that the larger stones have less of a significant effect on the thermal difference between day and night, leading to more tension as the grapes stress more. This extra stress means the grape doesn't ripen so early. The Tempranillo is an early ripening grape, and this soil makes it ripen later, producing a slower maturation of the grape,
providing more body and personality to the wine.
As it takes longer to mature, the acidity also gets less crisp and the tannin softer, becoming more velvety. This is the philosophy behind this wine.
Does it see wood?
Yes, it ages for 18 months in French oak.
This is our battle. The wood should be like the frame of a painting. It makes it shine, but the painting is the most important part.
I can notice all kind of fruits in this wine, perhaps wild fruits in particular.
Yes, wild fruits, raspberry.
Okay, folks, thank you very much for the selection that you have made of your wines, and continue with your style of doing things. Unique and traditional. The outcomes are evident.
Thanks.
The Sauvignon Blanc.
This is a variety that is becoming very popular now in Rueda, more every day. In this case with very unique characteristics, different to other wines like Verdejo, although the old people say that Sauvignon Blanc becomes like Verdejo here, not that the grape becomes similar, but that the climate that we have here confers Sauvignon Blanc characteristics that approximate those of Verdejo wines.
They're starting to compare the fresh wines of Rueda to the best French whites of the La Loire and Chablis. This would be a direct comparison between the Sauvignon Blanc from here and those from up there.
In the most recent years in international contests of Sauvignon, the area of Rueda has shined. Moreover, for what I told you before, beyond the care that we all put into its elaboration, in my opinion it is because we have a privileged climate when it comes to white wines.
To me it smells like fresh salad with cucumber right there.
With leaves.
That is what I was going to say. I notice herbs.
Fig tree leaves, recently cut grass. There in the palate it has a softer acidity than Verdejo. These are much more quiet wines. But it has a long-lasting effect in the mouth that reproduces the nose.
It gets a sweet first impression, but then it gives you all this acidity in the sides of the tongue and a bitter aftertaste.
Correct. This is a good wine for good drinkers. In comparison with the Verdejo, it provides something special in the mouth.
It wants to stay in the mouth.
Correct.
And has a long finish. I like this wine a lot.
The journey in the mouth is sensational. As I told you, it comes from the climate. It comes with the explosion that you expect from a fresh white, but then stays in the mouth, and 20 seconds after, you continue with the sensation of the wine still being there.
Have you tried ever to experiment with barrique, like in Bordeaux?
We have tried a couple of things, but people are demanding fresh wines. We want to explore that option for the future. However, people expect exactly this from a Sauvignon.
Thank you, Albert, for showing us this fantastic cellar and these wines. They are truly spectacular.
Thank you, and you know where you have a home.
I'm here with Ruth Gonzalez, who is the responsible for eno-tourism of the Bodegas de Alberto in Rueda. And we're going to taste some of the wines that we have been discussing before with Carmen. And starting with
Toledo. This Toledo is a special wine. We are the only winery making this style of wine in Rueda. It is a fortified wine, similar to the sherry wines, and as such, it is the main difference regarding the other wineries in Rueda. Smell like dried nuts.
I feel it's salty, and the floor is very present.
That's correct. The Palido has this salty characteristic. It has been included in the Rueda Regulatory Council since 2019. Very recently, that's right. The entrance is powerful, but also very well balanced.
It has a bitter touch, perhaps almonds.
Almond, nuts, yes. Yes, it leaves the bitter note in the aftertaste.
Would that come from the Verdejo?
Could be, yes. It could come from the Verdejo, as it is one of its characteristics. The acidity, the bitterness, and the citric notes of Verdejo, like grapefruit. It is a wine easy to pair with food, with strong cheeses, with ham.
It has acidity, not very powerful, but it is there.
In the nose, it is like an explosion. You feel it will be a very powerful wine. However, in the palate, it's smooth and elegant. The graduation level is 16%. Sorry, 15.
Thanks, Ruth, for the presentation, and good luck with the commercialization.
Perfect. Thanks a lot for coming to taste our wines. You have us here for what you need.
I'm here with Jesus Sanz, who is a master cheesemaker here in Rueda, and he's going to tell us about how cheese, the traditional cheese of this region, is made.
Hi, Jesus, how are you?
Very good.
We're in the place where the process of elaboration starts.
Here you put the milk in. Once the milk is here, we set it to a temperature in which the rennet acts. The milk rennet is an animal enzyme that makes the milk curdle to become solid. Therefore, we add rennet until we get it all curdled. What is happening now is the next step, which is to break the curdled milk. If you pay attention, the curdled milk is now in small grains which are floating in the liquid. Those grains are what will become the cheese.
From each liter of milk, you get a liter of curdled milk.
However, you need 6 liters of milk to obtain a kilogram of cheese.
Okay, let's go to see it. We're now in the next step, which is when you get the curdled milk and press it.
The curdled milk grains have been placed in these cylinders, as you can see. And this would be the cheese. The cheese has taken the shape of the container.
Then you mature them, and you do this in another room, right?
Indeed. But before maturing, we need to add salt. Let's see the salt first, and then the maturation. We place them here, which is salty water. It will spend a full day here. If you notice, the cheese gets harder on the surface due to the salt, and the inside gets the level of salt needed to mature.
Alright, so the cheese is maturing here. These have just arrived.
The cheese that we have seen floating in salt. This one is still soft. As you can see, this one has only been here for a few days. We place it here to mature.
It is already somewhat hard.
And now, as it matures, it will start growing mold. Because it is an artisan cheese, the only ones we get are those of white colour. This is the camembert mold. Later, these blue ones will start appearing, which is the Roquefort mold. This is the normal process and the crust of an artisan Castilian cheese. One difference between that one and this one is not just the type of mold. Look at the height. Why? Because it continues losing water and it shrinks over time, and the water is lost from the bottom. Therefore, every 2 days we need to turn them around. All these cheeses. We need to turn all the cheeses every other day.
For how long?
During the 3 months that the cheese will spend in this area. We have the cheese here until it becomes semi-curated, and that takes 3 months. After that, it starts its aging in the subterranean cellar, where it will spend 1 or even 2 years.
Okay, let's go to check it out. We're now in the subterranean aging area.
We're underground. Once the cheese is semi-curated upstairs, we bring it here for aging. Usually, we keep them here for around 10 months, where they will develop complexity, achieve more interesting aromas as they lose the most lactic note, and they will also lose acidity. We're going to age some of these cheeses for 2 years.
Let's try them, and let's do it with a local red wine.
Fantastic.
We will try it with a Tempranillo blended with Cabernet Sauvignon from the Alberto,
which we will pair with this cheese, an artisan Castilian Campovieja. In particular, we have chosen the 3-month semi-curated one to get the acidity to contrast the red fruit of the wine for a perfect pairing. Let's see.
It is really good. Let's try with the wine. It works phenomenal. All right, Jesus, it has been a pleasure to visit your cheese factory.
I'm very happy that you liked it. Enjoy it.
And now we're gonna taste their wines, and we are in company of Leticia Sanz.
We're going to try now a couple of your red wines. Here we have the Brugnal. What kind of wine are you looking for in this one? What are its characteristics?
This is a variety that we brought from Los Arribes, upon the suggestion of a good friend and better expert who was Pascual Herrera. He told me that the variety was very good, and we decided to bring it here. We have multiplied it, and we are already making a wine which is very good.
It is very fruity. I feel wild fruits, but also big ripe strawberries.
It possesses very strong aromas, and moreover, they are different from what is known over here. These are not found in Tempranillo and other grapes.
Does it see any wood in the elaboration?
This is a wine made to drink young. We only make it seem a bit of wood, only 7 or 8 months in oak. When we feel that it has gotten the right quantity, then we stop.
You can feel it in the palate, but not much in the nose.
It is a minority grape from a very small area. Nobody knows Brunel yet.
It has a good acidity, not excessively high, but a good one.
The Brugnal is now getting better known, but it was not like that when we started.
And the last one that we will taste is Cenicienta, which is this unidentified variety.
The color changes.
This shows more complexity. In the nose it gives less fruit.
It shows jam fruits, which is normal due to its vintage.
It is very nice, very polished, very savory.
Yeah, it is silky.
I believe this is a great wine. It has a peculiarity, not to do with the wine, and is associated to the unfortunate future coming with the climate change, as it has a vegetative cycle much longer than Tempranillo. Its season is around 20 or 25 days longer, since budding to ripening. For example, right now is the flowering stage. Tempranillo has seen 100% flowering, while this one is on a 10 or 12% only.
What do you think?
It is very good. I like this wine a lot. Thank you very much to show us such fantastic vineyards and these wines that I find all to be great. We have not tried them all, but I'm sure they must be equally good. Good luck with your project of unique varieties.
Thank you very much.
We're here to taste your wines. This is perhaps the best place in the world, which is in the vineyard itself, right under this almond tree.
We are going to try our range of best known wines, which is Calas Viñas, a brand with 75 years of history. Now we see a new brand every day. My grandfather elaborated this brand in 1946. We have 3 styles of wine, a young Verdejo, a Verdejo fermented in barrique, and the Dorado. Dorado is recovering the historic wines made by my ancestors.
This one I really want to try because I never tried before.
Well, this is one of our special projects. Very special, delicate. It means coming back to our past. It is the strongest wine. However, it has been done in a way that we have had to put in a lot of care. It is a small production of only 2,000 litres, and is a recognition of our roots. These wines have been elaborated in the area for centuries. When Isabel the Catholic, the Queen of Spain during the discovery of America, already mentioned these wines back then. What happened? When my father and others founded the Rueda DO, they forgot about this wine because they wanted to promote the green ones, the young wines that have rescued this area.
In the past, they made them fortified. Don't you fortify them?
We don't. The method of elaboration of this wine is verdejo with Palomino fino. We continue maintaining Palomino fino, which is the grape that is now prohibited to plant, but we still conserve some plantings. We put it in damajuanas, the glass jar of 16 litres. We harvest late for the grape to get more residual sugar, and it undergoes an oxidative crianza for 2 years. The wine is inside the damajuana under the sun, in the extreme Castilian climate. The crianza is oxidative. The wine oxidates and takes the colour that we will see now. Curiously, it also has a biological aging stage, where the wine develops a sort of flower veil.
That comes from the Palomino, I guess.
Exactly. That's why we use Palomino. We keep it 2 years and then another 2 years in used barriques. It is 15% ABV, nothing to do with the 20% of the wines of my father when they fortified it historically. We just do a late harvest and the 2 years.
It is almost like a sherry.
Yes, it has the characteristics of sherry, a little bit. What happens? In the end, the first aromatic impression is reminiscent of the sherry wines. However, on the palate, you then find the verdejo with a more bitter fruit.
It is very good.
These wines are perfect to pair with ham, dried nuts, strong cheeses.
I'm really glad to have tasted this wine from the times of Isabel the Catholic, the Queen. Thank you very much, Eduardo, for all the explanations and for allowing us to try your wines. Good luck in the future. The future of the DO is already guaranteed, as inside Spain it is the most popular and sold white wine, and outside Spain starts to get very recognized.
Yes, there is a lot of work to do, but we are satisfied.
You start to be compared with the whites of the Loire and Chablis because of the quality. Thanks a lot.
Cheers.
Rueda is an amazing place. I already had a predilection for a good verdejo when thinking about a top quality white wine. But now I'm in complete love with this area and with the diversity of wines made here. We had promised a few people that we will come back, and we will. A tu salud, Rueda.